Welcome back to the channel, guys. It's always great to wake up and see XRP in the green. I have a lot to go over in this video that I think you might find very interesting. There's this video about President Trump paying off national debt with XRP. We've been talking about this for quite some time on the channel. This feeds into that. I also want to discuss, is a $10,000 XRP so crazy? I actually have the math to show you that really with central banks coming in right now, it's not too insane. I do think we will get there. Also, there's a lot of other information and news in this video, but let's go ahead and start with this. It's impossible for a layer 1 blockchain to function as intended if it's under that type of control. Ripple owns 48% of the XRP escrow. Okay, at dinner, President Trump, Brad, and Stewart agreed to transfer 35 to 40% of the escrow controlled by Ripple of the XRP escrow to the US Treasury. 35 to 40 billion of the XRP. This would leave Ripple with approximately 13 to 18 billion XRP, which is way below the 20% mark. That allows them to be considered decentralized, but it would still allow them to be the largest corporate holder by far of XRP. Ripple can still be the lender of last resort and all that jazz. Boom. Ripple just solved their largest problem. How the hell do we distribute all this XRP in compliance with applicable laws? This deal will close next week. In Jimmy's opinion, Trump will then revalue XRP at a significantly higher amount than what is currently trading. This is actually incredibly interesting. This is exactly how we talked about this, maybe like once or 1 or 2 months ago. It was actually my most popular video. I broke down the numbers, right? How much would it cost to pay off US debt with Bitcoin, right? How much would Bitcoin need to get to do that? And how easy you could do it with XRP, right? If you have a billion XRP at $10,000, that is $10 trillion. You're going to be able to get into this really, really deep. And I thought there's a few things here that didn't sound quite right, but let's get through this whole thing, and I'll go back and address the few things that I heard that didn't quite make sense to me. Remember what happened in 1933 when FDR confiscated the gold and had everybody turn it in, and then he increased the price in gold? This is a gold 33 all over again. We could revalue or re-equitize, if you will, XRP. And Trump could say, oh, just for shits and giggles, let's say it's worth $10,000 a coin. That's what we think the net discounted present value is based on the value of XRP in the next 20 years. What it's going to do for mankind and the value of this token, I'm going to deem it $10,000. Trump then has pulled a play from the FDR Depression era playbook. The US Treasury is now sitting on $350 to $400 trillion worth of XRP. The United States Corporation, Russia, China. What if they were to divide up kind of the known global geography? All right, really quickly. It's impossible so he mentioned XRP richest. So he mentioned, giving the United States 30 to 40%, 30 to 40 billion tokens or something like that, giving them 40%. But the escrow XRP is only 37 billion tokens. So if they gave even 50% of the escrow XRP, that would only be about 18.6 billion XRP at 50%. So his numbers are a little off there. But the idea of gifting XRP that is in escrow to the US government to then distribute to maybe some of the largest banks, that is a new interesting idea that I think we could actually do a little bit more due diligence and dive a little deeper on. I am going to take a little bit of time this week and see if I can uncover anything that would lead us to believe that this could actually in fact happen. So I just thought this was a really cool idea. I hope you found value from it. Let's keep it going. I did want to look at, because you always see, this Jimmy Valley, I think that's who he was quoting here. Jimmy, I think he was quoting Jimmy Valley in this clip that I played for you. So Jimmy Valley, believes that XRP could reach, 10,000 to 35,000 if it involves all of the money, right? So let me just, it's 14 seconds. You've probably seen this before, but it goes into what I'm about to show you. He would settle on agreement. So this would happen instantaneously somewhere between $10,000 and $35,000 a coin, and our lives will be, maybe the same, maybe different. I don't know. Just check this out. If XRP was $35,000 a coin, the US actually would only need 1 billion XRP to get 35 trillion out of that, right? 1,000 billions is 1 trillion. So if you have 35,000 billions, that is 35 trillion. Pretty simple, right? The US debt right now is 36.5 trillion. And it keeps going up. But that is a way that I don't see Bitcoin going to 36 million a token. But I can see XRP because the use cases are just enormous. You can pretty much put anything of value on the XRP ledger. You can pretty much put all of these central banks. You can put all of these banks with their own stable coins. Everything can flow on the XRP ledger. And that's why I am so bullish on it. And so let me show you this. As more central banks come in, as more banks come in and financial market infrastructures come in, and they want to buy and hold XRP long term, right? That is going to seriously reduce the circulating supply. So Ripple's escrow XRP, you can't really touch that other than, 1 billion or whatever the change is every month that gets released. Then Ripple decides what they want to do with it. If they were to distribute half of this to the US government, it would take them, a year and a half at least to do that. But what I want to show you here is the circulating supplies. This is because there was a big sell-off. 62 billion 800 million XRP in circulating supply. If this could be brought down to 10 billion XRP, and if a H100 red trillion was added to the XRP ledger, you would be at $10,000 per coin. Okay? So you can imagine all the money in the world is probably like 2 quadrillion, a little bit higher because there are private markets. Public markets is about $1.4 quadrillion. If Ripple gets 5, 8, 10% of the world's value, you're at over 100 trillion. Okay? And this is looking at 100 trillion with 5% circulating, that's 20,000. So at 1010 at circulating of 10 billion coins, you're at $10,000. I think it's extremely, extremely achievable. And then here's Versen and his brother talking with Andy Schectman. Let me play. Broadly diversify within the primary trend. So that would be precious metals, that would be cryptocurrencies, foreign currencies, agricultural ETFs, or farmland, even better oil and gas. You're broadly diversified within the primary trend. That is the way to succeed. The difficult part is finding the primary trend. You've done an amazing. You and your brother have done an amazing job of showing us all. See, I got the same mistake. I thought this was his brother, but it's Edo Faro. It's totally not his brother. That was my bad. That was my bad. What the primary trend is, I've been trying to do that. And that is of a dollar that is ultimately dead. We owe 28 trillion. 28 trillion in bonds that come due by 2028 in 3 years, but we only take in 5 trillion a year in taxes. So that's 15 trillion against 28 trillion in bonds that are maturing in 3 years. That doesn't take into account all of the debt we incur up until that point or running the country. It's math. This is all about math right now. So if you believe the dollar is in trouble, then instead of going Allen because you think that's how you're going to get rich, broadly diversify within that trend of a falling dollar. And not only will you become wealthy, but you will also walk away from the casino with chips in your pea pocket no matter how it plays out, or have a much better chance of it, at least. And a lot of interesting things said here, right? The US is in trouble, right? There is this huge debt clock that keeps, getting larger and larger, and there is a lot of money due over the next few years. How's the US going to tackle that, right? Or, go through that. It's going to happen under the current president's regime, right? Under Trump's regime. And so I think that, as Trump understands how this could greatly affect his legacy as president, I think he's going to do anything in his power to make sure nothing bad happens on his watch through this. And he could greenlight XRP and the price for XRP. If there's anybody on the planet that has enough power to do that, it would be Trump going to all the central banks and the BIS saying, this is what we're going to trade XRP on, flat 10,000, flat 20,000. I'm not saying that this is going to be a reality tomorrow, but this is a way through. Now, if you have some other suggestions or ideas on how we can get through this together, please let me know down in the comments. I'd love to take a look at that and see if there's any ideas that I could do a little bit more research on to polish those ideas and make them actually come alive. So, I'd love to hear from you. Please, former Massachusetts Senate candidate and crypto advocate John Dion. Wow, big U-turn. An XRP expert. We should buy. Let me just throw this at you. The market is down 700 plus points. We have tariff worries. We have debt worries. We have the 10-year acting really weird. Sometimes it's up, some it's hovering around 4.5%. Why is Donald Trump spending $1 gazillion on a strategic crypto res? It sounds like the dumbest thing in the world. Well, listen, there's a difference, Liz and Charlie, about AA Strategic Reserve, where you take the assets already that the government owns, the 200,000 Bitcoin that they already have on the books, and the other cryptos, and say, we're going to huddle that. We're not going to sell it for 20 years, and maybe come up with something like you want to pay your taxes in Bitcoin or XRP, we'll do that. We'll shed a little bit of that in the strategic reserve. And so but this concept of buying using the taxpayer fund issuing debt to buy Bitcoin, yes, Bitcoin and crypto is a hedge on the devaluation of the US dollar. I think this is what these news anchors don't understand, right? The debt is spiraling out of control. We don't bring in enough money to equal how much we are spending every single year, right? There's only so many years and so far you can kick this can down the road. Something has to happen, right? And like all you hear is negativity, negativity, negativity. At least John Dion, you and I, Brad Garlinghouse, we are trying to forward think this and solve this problem. And there's going to be a lot of people out there, that are going to hate on things that I'm saying and things that you're saying, but who cares, right? We know that Bitcoin is a store of value, but we know XRP is all of the above and more. So if there is a token that could take over the world's financial system, it is not Bitcoin. Banks won't touch it. Central banks won't touch it, right? What are they going to do if they refuse to even hold it in reserve, let alone use it for money transfers, right? Bitcoin is not the answer. So we don't print more dollars to buy the hedge of the devaluation of the dollars. And what we need to do is focus on stablecoin legislation. No, wait, why did he go there with this? Listen, I think a lot of promises were made in crypto. Crypto played a big role in the 2024 election. Crypto bunny. Yes, absolutely. Fair shake was, so he just seemed large. So he just threw all these crypto guys a bone by saying, we're going to buy your coin and stop the decline and stop the correction. So we're just going to buy it. The federal government stepping in. And listen, I think it's fair to say that the president and his family are pro-crypto. You're talking about the Trump Memecoin. You're talking about World Liberty Financial, where his sons are all involved. President Trump owns, Ethereum. And so, listen, crypto's here to stay. It's an important development in our financial markets and moving forward. But I think we got to focus on what the market needs. We need a market structure bill. Charlie, the first time you and I talked, you were like, why are we applying 1930s law and 46 case law to modern-day blockchain technology? Artificial intelligence, automation, robotics, quantum computing. Let's focus on the things we need, like real reform, centralized exchanges. If Coinbase goes bankrupt, do you know that my money goes into Coinbase's creditors? All right, we don't need to get into much more into the weeds on this, but the narrative right now on both right-wing news and Democratic news, left-wing news, is that, why is Trump doing this, right? I think Trump understands that he made a lot of promises to the industry, and I think he generally is excited about the industry. I think when people like Brad Garlinghouse and Brian Armstrong get into meetings with Trump and they start talking about how exciting the market is, how many banks are starting to come in to use the technology, how this is going to reshape how money moves around the planet. I genuinely think that it excites him right there. Could imagine a president has to sit through all of these meetings, and most of the stuff is probably extremely boring, right? At least Trump can understand this. He can relate to this, and I think he's going to make some moves that are going to benefit you and I in the future, and I'm really, really excited. Also, Brad Garlinghouse will join the first ever crypto summit hosted by President Trump. Here you go, another invitation and another situation where Brad Garlinghouse and other crypto leaders will be in front of Trump, and they can actually get into his ear and explain to him why this is so important. And maybe there is a deal to be made, right? If you ask some people, it sounds like there's a deal that is already done, but obviously we don't count our chickens before they hatch. If you want to see the official information before we pop champagne and celebrate and go out and, order the most expensive car or, light up the biggest house that you want, right? Obviously we need to make sure it's going to happen first, right? So I just thought it was good. All right. David Schwartz says, I noticed something interesting about many meme coins on the XRP ledger. In many cases, nearly all of their liquidity is in the form of an AMM between XRP and the Memecoin. This means that if the price of XRP, say measured in dollars, goes up, say 5%, the price of the Memecoin goes up. And I think there's a lot of really interesting coins on the XRP ledger right now. I liked Phoenix a lot. I think that's still going to be a good one. They have something that I think a lot of other meme coins don't have on the XRP ledger. So if you're not trading memes on the XRP ledger, maybe it's something to take a look at. Just understand that the memecoin industry is all risk. 99.9% of memecoin projects end up failing within the first few days or the first few months. So please, go ahead with caution. Talk with your financial advisor to get some more information on if meme coins are a good investment for you, or maybe you should stay away from that. Okay, XRP Ripple chart is forming a textbook descending wedge, a bullish reversal pattern. A breakout above resistance could send XRP soaring past $3 with $350 as the next level. So here you go, guys. 350 is our next level. And Dark Defender also said that we had initial surge at $3 and the correction immediately started toward the Fibonacci level 233. Considering this wave structure, wave 2 is the bottom. Bottom is in, and we are waiting for XRP to move towards 260 as soon as 233 and 222.22 cents are maintained. XRP is ready for an all-time high. So guys, once XRP reaches an all-time high, what is in store for us after that, right? I'm so excited. The future is right in front of us. We've waited so much time to get here to have a seat at the table. How does it